Hello, everyone. My name is Corey Thornton. I'm the senior editor here at Open Minds, and welcome to today's Circle Elite Executive Roundtable, Workforce Strategies that Drive Financial Sustainability, the New Vista case study, featuring Dana Royse, Chief Financial Officer at New Vista, and Dee DeWitt, Senior Associate here at Open Minds. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping reminders. Your audio will be muted for today's briefing. However, if you have any questions, please let us know using the question box. If time permits, we will answer those at the end of the presentation. And finally, the slides and the recording from today's roundtable will be archived and available for elite members on the Open Minds website starting tomorrow. And with that, here's Dee.
Hi, and welcome everybody. And Dana, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the New Vista case study, Workforce Strategies that Drive Financial Sustainability. Today in our agenda, we're going to talk about some learning objectives, introduce Dana, and talk about financial sustainability planning and the use of financial metrics, and then dive right into the New Vista story. What we're looking to do today in terms of learning objectives is to identify how workforce issues impact financial sustainability. They really truly go hand in hand, and I think everybody that's on this call is living and breathing that now and has during COVID and post-pandemic. How to align approaches to workforce challenges that also align with financial sustainability planning, and understanding how to budget, plan, and implement workforce strategies as well. I'd like to introduce Dana Royse. Dana is the Chief Financial Officer of New Vista. New Vista is a behavioral health provider in Central Kentucky, headquartered in Lexington, Kentucky, and you'll hear more about them, about New Vista later. Dana credits working hands-on in the areas of revenue cycle, grant management, budgeting, cost reporting, and financial management has been a catalyst for a 25-year-long career in New Vista. With an MBA, she serves as a CFO and has for over a decade, and it's this foundation that has helped her to be successful in this changing healthcare landscape. Dana, thank you for joining us today. We're really glad that you're here.
Thank you for having me.
So workforce planning and financial sustainability. There's national trends that I think we're all being impacted by, and I think it's important just to lay that foundation for today's discussion. Prescribers' average salaries are $221,000 and up nationwide. Licensed therapists' median salary for a master level, $70,000. Direct care staff, $25,000 and up. That doesn't include issues surrounding managerial talent and executive talent. Many of those issues involve retirements and changing of almost a generational changing of leadership within our industry. In addition to that, we've got demographics that are at work as well that become challenging in today's workforce environment. We've got an aging U.S. population, and important, we've got a multi-generational workforce. I've heard people talk about having 4, and in some very rare instances, 5 generations in one organization working. And if you can imagine what just having 3 to 4 generations does with regards to cultural identity and workflows and how the culture permeates the organization, it can be very challenging to work with. Health equity issues, different populations that feel disenfranchised, those all present challenges to recruiting, hiring, onboarding, and so forth. One of the key challenges is turnover. The turnover rate was on average 44% in 2020 pre-pandemic, and afterwards has ranged from 27 to 80%. I know that before I joined Open Minds, just by way of example, in my previous role, I had a licensed clinical therapist with a 44% vacancy factor, and trying to hire through staffing companies on a virtual basis and not being able to find any even on a nationwide search. We've also got a number of other demographics that are changing things, changing how we work as well. In the IDD space, we have an aging population there of clients. And we have IDD clients whose parents are passing away due to old age. So the dynamics with that are incredibly difficult, challenging to say the least, as there becomes more of a need for supportive housing where there may or may not be the family supports that the same individual may have had when they're younger. 24% of IDD persons are living independently or with family members now that have caregivers that are over 60 years old. So I guess the question is, how do we ensure workforce investments align with financial strategy? Because that's really, I think, one of the key focus areas for today's conversation. We have workforce issues, we have financial strategy, but just like when we talk about strategic planning wanting to align with financial strategy and vice versa, we also want to make sure that our workforce investments and our workforce strategy aligns as well. That's one of the key roles that a CFO plays in ensuring those initiatives and strategies align. It's particularly true with the post-pandemic healthcare witnessing sustained shortages, increased competition for employees, and that's both within and without of the industry, and then resulting turnover. It gets particularly difficult when you're operating in a more rural area, and I know New Vista, you'll hear more about this, but they operated both a combination of metropolitan and rural areas. But particularly in rural areas, there's added challenges of who your competition is to employ the people that you're trying to hire, including non-industry competition such as Costco and Walmart and other employers. So this simply raises the question of how do CFOs align those resources and make them align with our financial resources as well. So the role of workforce strategy. In a macro level, workforce strategy is a subpart of the larger organizational strategy or strategic planning. The goal ultimately is to achieve a required organizational performance. Organizational strategy plays into financial strategy, which plays into our programs able to deliver capacity, deliver services, and do so in an efficient manner, and do so earning a margin that you can in turn reinvest for the future. The ultimate goal is improving your advantage in your marketing position. And I like to say, ultimately from a mission standpoint, I feel like the mission of a nonprofit organization serving clients is to be in business 5 and 10 years from now, which means excellent financial stewardship in addition to strategic planning, strategic workforce planning, and the like. So workforce planning, it's critical to operational success. Hand in hand, business strategy and workforce strategies go together. So for each workforce line, workforce strategy needs to think about improving competitive advantages in 3 different domains. What are the programmatic offerings? What are the services and programs? How does that impact what your workforce strategies are? System structural positioning. How are you operating? Are you operating as an ASO, a medical home, health home, disease management program, a waiver program? You may be operating multiple types of environments. Those also impact your workforce strategies. What are you doing with regards to your workforce capabilities? Are you in a fee-for-service arrangement, a pay-for-performance contracting, case rates, capitation? All of these different contracting options may have different implications with regards to what your workforce looks like and how you pay your workforce. So there are certain different strategic purposes that I'd like to just outline in thinking about strategically reviewing the workforce needs and how that plays into the clinical and operational review and a financial review. Ultimately, goal is to provide capacity to serve consumers and earn revenue on each unit And that's key as we go forward, because more and more we're focused on revenue per unit and cost per unit, and moving away from cost reimbursement strategies on the whole. How do we improve consumer preference? Consumers are taking an ever more active voice with regards to demanding a say in their care and what that care looks like. Everything from virtual care to hybrid care to what types of programs that are being offered. And one of the key HEDIS scores on a going forward basis, patient satisfaction. And you hear a lot about net promoter scores. And all of those sorts of conversations play into consumer preference, which ultimately is driven by face-to-face contact with their providers, which is the workforce we're talking about today. How do we improve payer preference? Payers approach things many times from a slightly different perspective, but again, as payers, they have a right to demand certain things from our staff. They may not demand it directly, but it may be indirectly through how contracts are incentivized, for example. How rates are developed with regards to taking into account what payers expect in terms of productivity from staff. So there's any number of things that the payers can do to impact what we demand in terms of performance from staff, and as a result, how our relationship with staff is developed from recruiting all the way through hiring and day-to-day work. Looking at improving performance and looking at consumer outcomes and functionings go hand in hand with that. We're more and more data-driven, outcomes-driven, and that is directly connected back to the workforce issues and how we develop our workforce in a strategic manner. And then ultimately facilitating new customer services and facilitating new payer relationships. In other words, growth. How do we grow both on the consumer side and the payer side? And what role does our workforce challenges and do our workforce strategies play into that? These are the kinds of things that we want to be thinking about when we think about workforce challenges and financial sustainability. So when we talk about financial sustainability, one of the key things that we talk about, I started to say ultimate things, but that seems a little harsh, but return on investment, ROI, return on investment, it's calculated by the net monetary benefits. What are our costs? What are our revenue less our cost over our cost? In other words, what is our margin? Historically, we see margins generally in the nonprofit behavioral realm of anywhere from 3 to 5%. 5% usually being on the high end for the most part when we think about it on a consolidated basis. But more and more conversations are moving away from that and moving towards thinking about ROI in the term of a net operating profit to 5 to 10%. And the reason for that is simply because of the changing landscape in behavioral health and the changing demands from payers and the need for investment on the provider side. Technology costs significant dollars. It's not unusual at all to see 7-figure technology investments in nonprofit organizations in order to stay competitive and to meet payer demands on a going forward basis. On the workforce issue, we're seeing more and more with regards to, for example, hiring pipelines, where Dana, just to use you since you're convenient, Dana may not have a vacancy now to fill, but has the potential to hire a licensed clinical social worker in an area that she historically is understaffed. And so it may be a decision of, do I go ahead and hire even though I don't have a vacancy and invest in that for a longer term, as opposed to being found short and lacking capacity when I need it. And so those types of issues drive the conversation about return on investment as an organization, return on investment on an individual, and so forth. And that's pushing that 2 to 3% to that 5 to 10% range because of needing to have the added cash on hand in order to make the kinds of investments to continue to grow and develop in the face of these new demands. So what are some examples of structural challenges that we may face? And when we think about that, I also think about performance-based compensation. Performance-based compensation, I think, is a key structural component when we think about workforce challenges and structure. When do you begin to, and these are rhetorical questions for now, when do you begin to reward for performance? For example, in the case of productivity. Besides productivity, what other performance measures can be incorporated into a performance-based model? One example might be productivity rewards, but then they're tempered by an adjustment for late notes. Just to use one example. How do you build equity into a performance-based program? For example, do you reward performance to administrative staff as opposed to simply frontline staff that are revenue driven? When you're focusing on clinical staff and programs, what do you do about the admin staff and support staff? Arguably, they are impactful as well, and without them, you really don't have services either, or you have them significantly less efficient. What is the upper limit on performance-based rewards? These are all key questions to be thinking about and asking as we talk about workforce issues and structurally how we design and use them. Some of the more recent examples of things that are being faced are, the cost of recruitment and the cost of vacancies. I most recently worked for quite a number of years in the California system, which is transitioning now away from a cost-based system. In a cost-based system, the cost of vacancies did not take on quite the importance that it does in a fee-for-service or a performance-based system. With vacancies in a fee-for-service system, when you have vacancies, and I know that you know this, if you have vacancies, you don't have revenue. So at the same time, the length to recruit has been elongated during and after the pandemic. So, what are the issues surrounding and how do you deal with potentially lost revenues, longer consumer wait times, reduced productivity, and things like that? One example that I'm aware of is some organizations that have shifted to, instead of unpaid internships, shifting to paid internships, with the hopes that a certain percentage of those individuals will stay with the company once they've achieved their license and graduated, and then they're working on their hours for their license. The thinking behind that is that paying for that internship, who can usually bill with clinical supervision, that cost of that internship is outweighed by reduced loss of revenue and offsets what otherwise would have been the cost of recruitment, which has gone up. Other considerations are moving away from the cost-based reimbursement models, like we mentioned, to capitated payments, other value-based forms. And then thinking about financial diversification, payer diversification. Those are the types of issues that go into thinking as well when you think about organizational realignment, and then you have to factor in the staffing. So just to some things, workforce competition and related trends have about 9 or 10 things associated with them. There's the workforce inflation versus stagnant reimbursement rates that are impacting all of us in the industry today. I was talking with an organization in Texas just recently, and on their IDD side, they've gone 10 years with no rate increases and 6 years with no rate increases on Medicaid mental health. And yet they're forced with workforce inflation in the term of higher starting salaries and having to pay for retention bonuses simply to keep staff as well. There's higher turnover that we mentioned earlier. That results in decreased productivity. Every time you turn somebody over, it takes time to bring somebody else on board and to train them. And so that's lost productivity. Increasing investment in the workforce by hiring the pipeline, which we've already discussed. The increased recruitment costs, which we've already discussed. I know many organizations where if they had their preference, they'd simply be working contracts, but they're faced with bringing in more and more grant revenue to help offset some of the lost revenue that's either from stagnant rates or increases in the cost of doing business. And much of the cost of doing business is in the workforce place. That also is true for administrative costs in the workforce as well. We've mentioned hiring and longer times to hire and vacancies, but ultimately what this means is the impact on capacity and the ability to meet consumer needs. Ultimately, that's why we're in the business. We're in the business for a mission. The mission is to serve our clients and to meet their needs and to meet the needs of our payers. And the workforce has been very impactful with regards to our ability to maintain that capacity on a regular basis. And so it's a very timely issue. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dana and to let us hear more about New Vista and then to talk about what you've been working on with regards to workforce strategies and sustainability. Dana?
Thank you, Dean. All right. So kind of our mission statement, you can go on and advance to the next slide. Our mission, and what we do here in Central Kentucky is that we provide primarily mostly outpatient mental health, substance use services, and intellectual and developmental disability services within kind of a 17-county region. It mentions here how we plan with our community. So we're long-standing nonprofit, and therefore we are, really in tune with the stakeholders in our area. These are people that, we rely on, to help us make sure we're meeting the needs of their communities. The next slide is really our principles, our guiding principles. These are the things that are in the background of everything and every kind of decision that we make here at New Vista, and they probably align very similarly to the things that you're focused on in your organizations. You can go ahead and advance. Here's just a little snapshot of our last completed fiscal year. Like I mentioned before, we're a nonprofit. We're managed by a volunteer board of directors. 19 probably seems like a really large number, and it is, but really that is designed in a way that helps have a member from residing in each county that we serve. And so that's part of our board composition, just furthering that, making sure that we're meeting the needs of our local communities. And in the vast, difference between the metropolitan area of Lexington and then serving the rural counties as well, to make sure everyone has a voice, not just because you're from the urban area, there's more voices to be heard. So we're really trying to serve everyone. We had an operating budget that year of $195 million. We provided just under $700,000 of charity care that year, over 400,000 instances of service provided to our community, just under 2,000 employees. We had 362 licensed and certified professionals. working for us that year. We've served over 21,000 clients in 30 service locations, about 74 different programs. We had just under 90,000 helpline calls, and then over 200,000 visits to our website that year. And moving forward, so we're one of 14 regionally based nonprofit CMHCs in Kentucky. We were formed in 1971, and as of January 2022, we are a demonstration site in Kentucky for the Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic. So 4 of the 14 in Kentucky are currently in the demonstration. Our current year operating budget is $215 million for our whole consolidated company. The CMHC and CCBHC that we're going to really lean on more and talking about the workforce strategies in those areas is about 700 employees, an operating budget of about 100 million. And in those, in this segment of our business, 61% is Medicaid revenue, so that's Medicaid managed care, Medicaid waivers for IDD services, also a very large portion. And then the remaining revenue is from grants and various contracts. And then just the balance of what's not 100% there is everything else. So that's small things, but it's donations, it's local governments, it's you know, our investment revenue or whatever, a really small portion, but yet definitely does provide revenue for the organization. All right, we can move forward. Here's just kind of a listing. We are a Joint Commission accredited organization and have been since the 90s. Here's a listing of kind of all of the services that we are offering in our outpatient setting. So obviously the behavioral health, substance use, MOUD, we're doing that. We have psychiatry. We're also doing primary care in our sites, assertive community treatment. We have crisis and emergency. So we have our own crisis hotline. We also run the 988 line for our portion of the state. And then mobile crisis and everything that kind of that entails in those crisis and urgent services. Also walk-in appointments, you know, in our outpatient clinics, those kind of things when that's the service that's needed. We also have TRP programs, also IOPs. We have a drop-in center. That location is located in our urban area. So we have a lot of homeless and transient populations there, just really trying to meet them where they are and what their needs are. It may or may not involve therapy, but it is a place where they can come. There's showers and food and different things that we have available there for them to access. We also have people living in the community in various supported apartment programs, and they usually have, they live independently, but they just have access to individuals to help them with their care because they don't really need to be inpatient. They just need a few more extra support, maybe medication management, some various things like that. And we provide that so they can be out of the hospital, they can live independently, just with a few extra supports than you may normally have. Also residential substance use, so the 28-day or less program, and then also prevention services are offered throughout our region as well, in all the schools. Okay, you can advance. Here's just a little snapshot. Like, so when I said there's 14 community mental health centers in Kentucky, this is kind of our regionally based design, you know, statewide program that really the state started in the early or mid 60s, mid 1960s. We're that section right there, kind of in white in the center. Those are the counties that New Vista serves. That was 2 regions at one point, but they were formed in 1971, and that's kind of the operating corporation we have today is that one there. And you can go on and advance, and I'll show you our counties that we serve, kind of blown up, and how we do that. So we have sites, and they're grouped in colors. So there's four different anchors, kind of for our 17 counties, and the ones that are in the same color are linked together. The anchor center is the one that's noted with the star. And then the counties that are supported by them or that they support in their whole hub site are the ones just noted with a dot, that they're the satellite office. And so what you can expect in an anchor center is that you have all the services. And they're really performing oftentimes services like care coordination for their whole anchor, all of the counties in their anchor. And so those might be located just in one location. So psychiatry, primary care, just the expanded full array of every service is offered in the counties with the STAR. And then in the counties with just the satellite, it's just your basic, mostly therapy, case management, peer support, community support, a lot of the services, but not as robust as what is provided in the anchor. All right, you can advance. And so really that is it. We see the good ahead. That's kind of New Vista's motto. And that's just a little bit of our corporate overview. And so we can go on and move into our presentation and really the topic to talk about today. Lay this out so beautifully of all the challenges that we are facing in our field, providing these very needed human support services in our various, whatever business line that you're in. These are the things that are really facing all of us. And so just the workforce and the labor market trends and real inflation. Dee hit it, on the head, like the inflation that we've all experienced. We can't keep up, and we may not be earning more revenue, but we are definitely experiencing more cost. And like, how do we manage that? Then the demand for our services, predicting what that is and having the adequate workforce to support that demand. And when you're projecting growth, sometimes we really talk about this would be wonderful. We'd love to do it. We think that we could probably, break even pretty quickly, make money in the long term, but really, can we get the workforce to support that? And that really has to go into that decision making. Budgeting and planning for variables. Everything that you put down on paper, sometimes that looks really good, but you have to think about all the things of like, well, what if there are delays? What if I do have staff that transition? Building that in and planning for that, you just have to do it, because otherwise you're probably not going to meet your budget targets because things happen. And calculating that return on investment, with those variables. How long am I gonna, is it gonna take me to turn a profit? What is my investment on the front end? And blending the capital and funding models that we all have to support those services. It gets more challenging and more complex, I think, all the time. Looking for grants. And not all grants are good. You really, for your organization, you have to be picky. You have to really evaluate the ones that I personally don't like is when it's like we have to provide one FTE of a person to do X, and it may not be the thing. Like, it might not be something that we would have been doing otherwise if we didn't, have this grant requirement. What I look for are the things that I want to do this anyway, and these are sources that let me help get startup, cost, purchase, maybe take some of the pressure off of building up that productivity in the front end, so that we can have a fully sustainable program by the time that the grant funding runs out. Okay, you can advance to the next slide. And this is it used to be the hidden costs of turnover that we talked about, and we know what these are. These are the not so hidden costs that we're all experiencing is the lost revenue due to vacancies. Obviously, in the human service field, if you don't have people, you don't have revenue most of the time. They're not just paying us for no service. We don't provide the services, and we have to have the people to provide the services. And, when you have staff that turn over, and if there is a vacancy, you have, increasing wait times for appointments, and that lowers your client satisfaction scores. You're not able to get people in as quickly as you did previously. The time for new employee ramp up to full productivity, as well as kind of the declining productivity after a resignation and notice. All are challenges that you have to deal with. In new employee ramp up, it's like, you may have a clinician that's, fully experienced, but they're not experienced in your electronic health record or your processes for completing an intake, and all of the requirements that your payers put on you may be a little bit different than what they've experienced in the past. And so there is just a knowledge base of that they're really learning a lot of things very quickly to try to get up to those productivity numbers. And then obviously, when they have resigned to go somewhere else, they just don't have the fervor for their job as much as they did previously, and they just tend to do less. And that's a time when we're also, trying to get our clients transition to other providers. And hopefully we do have, the other providers to be able to transition them to. And then we can do a warm handoff. Those are the things we do that. But obviously it is one of the costs that you deal with when someone does leave. Here at New Vista, we do put a lot of emphasis on education, clinical supervision, offering that to, people who maybe are not independently licensed, working for our organization, and how they can get their hours. And we do that at no cost to the individual. There's not even really a payback period time of where you must work for us for so long. So that is a very costly investment. And we also do really, we match people up for their clinical supervision, very well with our, long-term seasoned, staff. And that's an investment. Like, we're offering this resource of like the best staff that there could be for you to get your clinical supervision under. And then also just training, lots of training, in person, rely us, we use all the sources. And if you are a person that you have, special interest in a certain area, we help people, get certified in that area. And so there is a huge investment that we try to make in our staff. And by doing that, we think they're just better prepared to serve our clients. And ultimately, that's the main goal. In addition, clients, we see this a lot as people are transitioning, even when we have other providers ready and able to take their caseload. Some clients will exit treatment before meeting their treatment plan goals just because they don't want to continue their treatment with a new therapist. They feel like they're starting over. And they feel better, obviously, because they've had some services and they've probably achieved some things in their treatment plan, but just not fully. And there is a group of people that will not start up with a new therapist. We'll probably see them again, but down the road, just kind of when things, decline for them a bit, we'll see them re-enter treatment. And just the knowledge loss that you lose when you have, people that have been with your organization for a while and trained and, really fit with the mission. Just the knowledge loss that they have is significant. And so it's like that you also have to develop your training programs to kind of overcome that. So you can get the next groups trained and as ready to do their job as fast as possible. And so that involves a lot of investment as well. You can advance. So number one, I think when we started thinking about how we're going to manage, our workforce, it is one of the top reasons, our top initiatives in our strategic plan is, we have to be strategic. Like, this is our business model. We have to have people. So our number one asset is our people. And so we definitely, workforce is an initiative on our strategic plan. We measure our progress, we're accountable. Where are we succeeding? What could be better? And be honest with ourselves, like, how can we make this better? And just be accountable to that. Really live and breathe the strategic plan. Don't just have one. Really monitor yourself against how you're moving forward and achieving the initiatives that you have within. Be deliberate about promoting in-house opportunities, because some people, they get burned out. It happens. It's a very challenging job to provide therapy day after day, right, to some of the most challenging and vulnerable individuals, that we serve. So sometimes you just need to try something different for a while, or do, whatever. So we're very deliberate about promoting in-house opportunities, because you're probably that mission-oriented person. You are succeeding, you're doing well, and you just need to change. And so we really want to sell ourselves to, like, there's all these other things, all these other positions that you may not even thought about before, but we'd love for you to transition into one of those rather than leaving the organization. We really made a huge investment in preparing our staff to be our future leaders. And so offering some external leadership development training that the whole organization did. So the executive team started it. And then we just filtered it down of all levels of people that are already managers, but people who've been identified that, for themselves, that they view that they want to be a manager later in their career. And so really just making that available to as many people as we can within our organization to really give them support of moving into an administrative and management role. Okay, we can move on. And so here's just a picture snapshot. These are the 6 kind of strategic plan initiatives. This is, if we excel at these 6 things, we will be doing amazing in all areas of our business, basically. We try to keep it as simple as possible because we are a really large organization. We do a wide variety of services and a lot of little, small programs that seem forgotten sometimes because they aren't the biggest locations, but still all of these initiatives really speak to everything that we do everywhere. And if we can do well at these, we will be very successful as an organization. So you can move on to the next slide, and I've explained these each a little bit more. And really at the time, so we're in year 3 of our strategic plan. And so when we first started, it was implement a certified community behavioral health clinic model. And that was that demonstration site that we now are, with the state. That was coming on, and we knew that was going to require staff and different levels of staff than we'd had previously. So we knew that was going to be a key component. Also providing timely access to crisis and urgent services across our region. Really focusing on making sure that the response times are as quick as they can, possibly be. Making sure our helpline, our crisis line, the calls are coming through when we're monitoring, and we have enough staff to answer all the calls, and especially 988 coming on. Provide a client experience, really making sure that we're meeting the client's needs in an environment, also in an environment, a clinic space that's nice, clean, comfortable, safe, that really encourages individuals to choose and recommend us. Because really that's the best word of mouth, is someone who can, maybe exit their treatment and say that New Vista helped them. That is the best word of mouth, best advertising you can have sometimes. Is just people who've been satisfied with the services they've received. Next, here's our staffing. Provide a work experience and environment that encourages, mission-driven top talent to, work here, but to grow and stay with New Vista. Very, very important. Enhance and strengthen our DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion within our policies, procedures, training, and really just our everyday climate. Just making sure that when people, everyone is welcome here, and we are here for everyone, and just making sure that people feel that, and that it's they see it in everything that we do. Also developing a trauma-informed organization, very important. And these last 2 items, diversity, equity, inclusion, and trauma-informed and wellness, those things are really important to our staff and our clients as well. So these things just further enhance really the client and work experience here at New Vista. And you can move to the next slide. So here are the 4 pillars of initiatives within the workforce experience kind of strategic plan. And then under each of these, we have multiple tactics and multiple projects that we measure ourselves and really track our, you know, how we're being accountable, how we're meeting the goals that we set out for ourselves. So the first one was to create a recruitment and hiring retention environment that demonstrates respect and provides opportunity for growth and development for our staff. Develop a total compensation and performance management system that attracts and retains the top talent. Provide additional company related information, so that communication really within the organization, making sure that people have access to the information, or when they have questions, they know that they can get them answered, and there's a way to do that. And it's consistent, and everyone, you know, gets all the same information. And really are offering that to them in the largest, you know, kind of reader and viewership possible. You know, the attention span of people is very short, and the amount of time people have to you know, retain and gather information is, they have so many things to do in a day. So we try to do that in like quick, easy things. You know, videos are more viewed than you know, some email posts, and so just trying to create various platforms of which we get information out to people. Also identifying that growth and opportunities for the next generation of that potential New Vista leadership, and kind of talking about that leadership program I mentioned before. All right, you can move on. So this is the more in depth of that hybrid centralized hiring model, kind of what we did specifically to change kind of our process. And so it really became a personalized approach. We have a recruitment director, and then that person was already employed, but we added 3 recruiting staff under the recruitment director to bring this more of an in-house corporate operating recruitment strategy. And these recruiters act as the concierge to retain the applicants. So basically, as soon as someone applies, same day or next day, they receive a contact from one of the concierge recruiters. And that person will kind of stay with them throughout their whole kind of hiring journey. And then if they are hired at the end, this person stays in contact with them to see how things are going, and really it's just their HR contact for as long as they want it to be after they're employed. This has really reduced misinformation regarding salary and benefits, because this one core group knows all the answers. And when you're in a large organization, sometimes like people don't know, and so, you know, instead of having to say, I don't know the answer to that, let me get back to you, this person knows that information right up front. So it really helps, definitely from the future employee perspective, for them to feel like these people know what they're talking about. They, you know, there wasn't any answer that they couldn't give me that I asked, you know. And it really places candidates, you know, in a holistic lens. Like sometimes before, people would just apply for one job, one title, maybe they searched on our site, but there could be many other opportunities available to them that really fit their, you know, background, their interest. But now, instead of, you know, somebody might apply for a certain job, but instead of just only reviewing them for that one job, we look to see across the system what are all of the other potentials that maybe they're interested in, if that particular one, you know, gets filled or whatever. Also, we just have a larger pool of candidates kind of for each job, kind of, you know, doing this instead of like the one and done approach that we kind of had before. We're considering everyone for any open position that's available. And because those recruiters know all those jobs, it's really easy for them to do that. Whereas managers before that were, in hiring, they might not know what someone else has available. And so it was difficult for them to, to share that with the employee. And so really what we're trying to do is provide a superb New Vista experience to applicants. Even if we don't move forward in the hiring process, every applicant, receives this positive, experience, hopefully, and follow up, during their, hiring. They may select another job, but if that one doesn't work out, we've had plenty of people come back and say, are there other open jobs? Because I did select another job, but I'm interested again. And so if we feel like if they have a positive experience, that they leave with a positive experience, that can be a future employee just down the road. You just never know. Okay, you can move forward. Here are some other external recruitment strategies. Definitely doing lots of visits with universities, colleges in our area, just trying to get people kind of that are just beginning to start their career, and recognizing that we have the internships that we can offer and really get them started here. We also use all the platforms like Indeed. We manage our Glassdoor. You want, positive experiences, showing up on Glassdoor so other people are seeing that. It's kind of your net promoter score for services turned for employees. Marketing collaboration. So recruitment and marketing work hand in hand. We run booths together and all the events. Just trying to get a positive, view out in front of any potential employee that could want to apply. Updated salary structures, sign-on bonuses for very difficult to hire positions, involved in community engagement, like in the internship program, I already mentioned that, and then other sponsored job campaigns. When there's really difficult to fill positions, we'll add a lot more resources into moving those jobs up to the top and able to get filled. And that's usually we have clients waiting and no people, and that's when we really need to get those job campaigns really move to the forefront. And all of this is just so that we can get people hired, and that's the main thing, is having the staff to do the job. Okay, you can advance. Here's just some little snapshots.
If I may, one of the things that I believe I heard your CEO, Dee, mentioned a while back that struck me as interesting is you develop with new hires during the onboarding a buddy system? Or,
yes.
And it could be cross-departmental. They may not both be therapists.
Right.
It doesn't really matter what they do. And I heard that was very successful.
Yes, it is. And oftentimes those people kind of during their orientation, right? When we have, I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute, but I'll just go ahead and in our orientation, kind of some of the things that we changed about that. So it's a corporate orientation. Your first 2 days are all together. So could be in a class. You're in class with people, everyone that's starting that week, and they could be across our region in various positions, right? And so people meet each other that way, and they do really stay in contact with each other as they progress in their, career, and even for opportunities that are available, in one of the particular areas. It's like, oh yeah, I met that person whenever I was in, my orientation, and we have this opening. Wonder if they want to come over to, my area, So yeah, that buddy system definitely produces, people going through the same thing, feeling the same things, and sometimes it can be, I don't know this because I've been with New Vista for 25 years, but the thought of starting a new job is very stressful, right? You don't know what you're going to encounter, and so we just try to make it as positive as possible, and definitely the buddy system definitely helps in that area, for sure. Here are just some snapshots of various Power BI dashboards that we have, just kind of monitoring, how many people we're hiring, what status people are in, and just making sure that we have our eyeball from like a high level on what's going on in the organization. And there is some part of working in the health and human service field that there are background checks that we can't speed that process up. Oftentimes that coming back from it just takes as long as it takes. But how can we manage every other piece and part of it to decrease that timeline as much as possible? Is what we really focus on, the things we have control over for sure. Okay, you can go ahead and advance. One other thing is the compensation enhancement through incentives. And so this was something that we developed quite a while ago, probably about 7 years, but it has had multiple iterations over time. And really this is what I would say, there's multiple people in different kind of performance plans, and some of those are really specific to certain jobs. So this is the one I would say we have the most people in this plan. So there's others, but this is where most of the people earning an incentive are clinicians and are in this track. And initially it was quantitative only. So it's hard, you have to start somewhere. And so that's where we started, quantitative. So this is just like the hours of productivity and measuring those, developing the metrics, being clear in our communications on how to achieve it with our staff, and then also transparent reporting. So everyone knew at any day of the month kind of where they were in their productivity achievement. And so I think that's really important. People sometimes don't want to believe data, and so how you really push that home is showing them how it's calculated, that the system does work, and it is very transparent. And that was at a time that we had not adjusted our salaries, and so we were doing that in a prompt payment method of monthly, so that you achieved, you receive, and it's very timely, and that you don't have to wait a long time to receive your incentive amount. And that was really needed at the time, just because we had not adjusted salaries in a while. And so we felt like that was really important to do for that group. So that was a kind of short-lived. It was the first start. And then we developed the plan that included qualitative. So the qualitative piece was, this plan was everything that was involved in quantitative, but it also had a qualitative review of charts, really measuring, completeness, accuracy, timeliness, a lot of the indicators that are required either by state regulation or payers are factored into this to make sure that we're doing everything in the time frame. Our notes, we have SMART goals. We're discussing the achievement or work towards those goals in every session, and the documenting, and our EHR supports kind of the service that we're providing. So there's kind of like a rubric developed for that qualitative component, and we were doing the same thing. It was a qualitative review of a sample of charts, so it wasn't every single chart because that would have been impossible for us to do, but a very random sample of qualitative reviews of those charts. And really the way that you could have a reduced incentive for if you didn't have the quality component there. And so the way it was structured, though, that there were so many components involved in the quality that rarely, even if we disagreed on what the score was for one item, it wasn't ever like anything that would have changed the category the person was in. So I think that helped manage and make this very fair and very transparent for the employee. And then just before we were entering the CCBHC demonstration, we really amped up the qualitative component because now we're really focused on integrated care and meeting a lot of the items kind of for the outcomes that are involved in CCBHC, and really adding those pieces in to what we were reviewing. We did scale back our payment to quarterly. And at this point, we'd adjusted our compensation so that our salaries were much more competitive and better. But it is interesting that when you scale that back to quarterly, that you do have some people drop off because it's like you're not getting that immediate kind of reinforcement of that high productivity number. And so I think we're still in the evaluation page on that, because then some other employees also feel that by it being reviewed quarterly instead of monthly, that takes some of the pressure off. So if you do have some PTO planned or some time off that you couldn't help, you were sick or whatever, that like looking at that from a quarterly perspective helps them feel not as stressed on a monthly basis. So it has definitely pluses and minuses. Okay, you can advance. Here's just a little bit of an outline of kind of what I talked about before, how much we paid, how we kind of monitor that plan. We'll just move along to the next slide since that detail's there for everyone. These were the hot topics we were hearing from employees and applicants. Training. Here I've highlighted something that we do. We did this pre-pandemic, and this is our second year kind of after the pandemic doing this. Last year, our training is really an in-service training. We get external and seasoned employees to have a training on site 3 days. Last year was called Reinvigorate because that was our first year post kind of the pandemic, kind of getting people back together again. And this year is called Illuminate. And so this is something that we provide for our staff every year. And they really love having external, people in the field come in, clinicians giving that training and really learning, getting continuing education credits and such. The opportunities for advancement, the flexibility to work from home. We have people who work from home. We have hybrid that do a little bit of both. We have flexible start and end times. We just really kind of tailor that to what the business needs and then also what the employee desires. Benefits are huge, and communication, that was really important, and transparency. And go advance to the next slide. So that's how then we designed our strategic plan for workforce. So these are their needs, and here are the things that we're really going to focus on. So improving the work spaces, offering that flexible, work schedule, creating that leadership development program, putting focus on offering those internships that hopefully lead to employment. Also encouraging that internal advancement or transfer. Completing exit interviews when people do leave to help us identify what are the trends, what were the barriers, what are the things that we can do to improve the next time. Okay, and really culture, getting people that fit. Sometimes when you need a lot of staff, you don't really take as much time to think about how this person fits, but over the long term, really identifying people that fit your culture, that are mission driven, is really important. And it really helps keep those people that are going to be invested in your organization. Okay, you can move forward. Here's just kind of a little snapshot of how we are kind of accountable to our strategic plan and how we measure how we're, meeting our goals, what percentages are we in. This is presented to our board on a quarterly basis so that they are, knowing exactly where we are and what things we're working on. So that's a really big piece. Moving forward, all the work pays off. We are so excited that this year New Vista has been recognized as one of the best places to work in Kentucky in the large employer category for 3 years in a row. So we're really excited about this. This is ran by the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. It's really, it's a survey. We survey every staff member. Every staff member has an opportunity to submit their results. There's a lot of really, even if you didn't win an award, just the reporting that comes back is so insightful and broken down in multiple ways. As Dee mentioned earlier, just talking about how multiple generations working together in a work site, who have, you know, what their generational biases, right? Like that, you know, it is there. How do we meet everyone where they are? And this report really gives you that. It gives you the breakdown by generation. It gives you the breakdown in the length of time that you worked for the company, what your educational background is. So it divides it all out into these ways that are really digestible and really helps us make decisions on, like, what are we going to do next? Because there's a missing gap here. If this is a low score, what are we going to do about it? So I think that's really important. But that is definitely, you know, we're really excited about that. But there was a lot of work for many years that we weren't winning awards that went into it. But right now we're really pleased to win again. Okay, can move forward.
Dana,
That's my contact information, and feel free to reach out if you need anything.
Yes. And this will be made available online. I think Corey will say more about that in just a second. Dana, thank you so much for your time today. This is great information. I really appreciate it. Corey?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dana. I want to thank you, Dee, as well. And I want to thank everybody who joins us today. And I want to remind everybody that the slides and the recording for this will be made available on the Open Minds website tomorrow, and that you can join us for our next roundtable next Thursday, May 23rd at 1 p.m. How to develop a new strategy for whole person care, a guide to designing your integration roadmap. For a full list of upcoming roundtables or to register for that event, you can visit the Executive Roundtables page located under the events tab at www.openminds.com. Dee and Dana, thank you again. I hope you both have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.